Good morning, good afternoon. On Saturday mornings we have a koan class, and at the moment we are on case 4 in the Book of Serenity, and I'll tell you how it goes. The world-honoured one points to the ground. As the world-honoured one was walking with the congregation, he pointed to the ground with his finger and said, "This spot is a good spot to build a sanctuary." Indra, emperor of the gods, took a blade of grass, stuck it in the ground and said, "The sanctuary is built." The world-honoured one smiled. It's a beautiful image of the congregation walking with the Buddha and him pointing to the ground, saying this would be a good place to build a sanctuary, to build a temple. And Indra, leader of the gods, picks a blade of grass and places it in the ground and says the temple is built, the sanctuary is built, and the Buddha smiles. One way to think about this is that nothing special needs to be done, nothing more needs to be added. Just a blade of grass is enough. Just this simple life that we have is enough. Who we are is enough. And we can, if we want to, build a temple like this beautiful temple here. It's amazing, this temple. I was looking at some of the architecture this morning because it's still in construction, and there's so many different images of lotus flowers, like three-dimensional carvings, and also some are kind of molded through molds, through concrete molds. There's so many different variations of lotus flowers around this temple, all the temple grounds. It must be years and years and years in the making, this whole temple complex here, and it's really beautiful, very inspiring to be part of it. So this koan isn't suggesting that there's anything wrong with building a temple or building things in our life. We can build a career. We can want to do well at university, and we can want to raise our children well, or use our skills as fully as possible. We can do that. But it would be good when we're doing that to know that actually just a blade of grass is enough. At the same time, we can build a very ornate temple. We can build maybe even a complicated life, complex life with many different factors. We can do that. And that is skillfully done when we remember that just a blade of grass is enough. In that way, if we, for whatever reason to do with circumstances, fail in our endeavours, we don't come crashing down so much if we fail in our endeavours. If we know that a blade of grass is enough, that our true nature isn't dependent on outcomes in the external world. We don't have to achieve anything. We can, because it's enjoyable to do that, but we don't have to. Our true nature exists whether we do one thing or do another thing. And this is not just it's not just theoretical. This is actually so. I mean, it's truly so. That we're okay. Everybody is worthy of respect, no matter what they achieve, or in what way they fail, or in what harm they do, what mistaken views they have. They're still worthy of respect and care, because we're all just like this blade of grass, every single one of us. Really contemplating that we're each this blade of grass brings a deep peace and a sort of a deep confidence as well, because we can be confident that we are fine. And then from that place of being fine, we go off in our little legs and do things. But we're already fine. The other day, I heard an Aboriginal elder referring to his approach to life as one of maintenance, one of just maintenance rather than one of progress, rather than being about building things to get somewhere. It's more a life about maintaining things as they are, caring for things as they are, sort of more circular. I was reflecting on that, a sense of how beautiful and caring it is to just maintain things. And it has a kind of egolessness about it. If you're just maintaining things, just caring for things as they are, day in and day out, in the same way that the sun rises, crosses the sky and sets, and then the next day it does the same thing, and then the next day it does the same thing. There's no real ego involved. There's activity involved. There's the activity of the sun rising and crossing the sky and setting, but there's no ego involved. So we could also think about taking that approach to our life. Each moment of our day is to do our best to maintain, maintain it as in care for the day, care for the people that we come in contact with and the objects that we come in contact with, all the sentient and non-sentient beings we come in contact with, to care for them, which often in our tradition, to care for something really simply means to recognize it, to notice it. Just noticing, like noticing the lotus flower artwork or the ornamentation of the lotus flowers around this whole temple complex. There's something kind of sacred simply in witnessing something. It's paying respect to it by acknowledging its existence. It's very simple. It's like that blade of grass, it's just very simple. But often we don't do it. Often we're preoccupied with our thoughts and our eyes are kind of glazed over and our ears kind of muffled. We don't really notice things or hear, we don't notice sights or sounds so well. So it's kind of just a simple appreciation of ordinary life, really. I think that's the theme that I've been sitting with today. Just appreciating ordinary life and how kind of ego dissolving that is, to just appreciate ordinary life. It's a little different to a lot of the messaging that we have in modern society about achieving things and kind of infinite growth and infinite progress. On a finite planet, it's not a very good idea. It's not actually a workable idea. But we can still try and achieve something within a sort of a cyclic way of viewing the world, like preparing a meal. Starts off with the ingredients, you gather them, and then you prepare them, and you cook them, and you serve them, and then you wash the dishes. And so there's a kind of an arc of progress that happens in the preparing of a meal. But there's also just a sort of an ease. The meal is prepared, the stomach is full. Later on, it'll get hungry again, and we will do that again. And just that movement of caring for just them, caring for the day, caring for the cycles. It's a little different to trying to build a bank account infinitely high, or trying to gain status higher and higher and higher. It's very different to that kind of linear way of viewing life. And thinking about that reminded me of a chapter out of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. Which I may have read before, I'm not sure. It's called Zen and Excitement. I'll just read a section of it. Zen and excitement. Zen is not some kind of excitement, but concentration on our usual everyday routine. My master died when I was 31. Although I wanted to devote myself just to Zen practice at Eheji Monastery, I had to succeed my master at his temple. I became quite busy, and being so young, I had many difficulties. These difficulties gave me some experience, but it meant nothing compared to the true, calm, serene way of life. It is necessary for us to keep the constant way. Zen is not some kind of excitement, but concentration on our usual everyday routine. If you become too busy and too excited, your mind becomes rough and ragged. This is not good. If possible, try to be always calm and joyful, and keep yourself from excitement. Usually we become busier and busier day by day, year by year, especially in our modern world. If we revisit old, familiar places after a long time, we are astonished by the changes. Cannot be helped. But if we become interested in some excitement or in our own change, we will become completely involved in our busy life and we will be lost. But if your mind is calm and constant, and you keep yourself away from the noisy world even though you are in the midst of it, but if your mind is calm and constant, you can keep yourself away from the noisy world, even though you are in the midst of it. In the midst of noise and change, your mind will be quiet and stable. Zen is not something to get excited about. Some people start to practice Zen just out of curiosity, and they only make themselves busier. If your practice makes you worse, it is ridiculous. Do not be too interested in Zen. When young people get excited about Zen, they often give up schooling and go to some mountain or forest in order to sit. That kind of interest is not true interest. Just continue in your calm, ordinary practice, and your character will build up. If your mind is always busy, there will be no time to build, and you will not be successful, particularly if you work too hard on it. Building character is like making bread. You have to mix it little by little, step by step, and moderate temperature is needed. You know yourself quite well, and you know just how much temperature you need. You know exactly what you need. But if you get too excited, you will forget about how much temperature is good for you, and you will lose your way. This is very dangerous. So to not get too excited, though, doesn't mean that we can't be inspired. I feel very inspired by practice. So we can be inspired. But it's got a kind of a grounded steadiness about it, that inspiration. Even it can be intense, the way Tangan Harada Roshi talks about, practice like your hair is on fire. You can actually still practice with that kind of intensity, but not be overly excited. Just very focused, very determined. And we can be industrious and hardworking without being overly excited. It's like our mudra. The right hand is activity, the left hand is equanimity or stillness, and they come together. Activity and stillness come together. So we can be active and still in the mind while our body is active. You can do that. Someone said another thing that I thought was rather lovely about this blade of grass, that when we find ourselves unsettled for whatever reason, we can remember that blade of grass and we can replant it ourselves. We can sort of come back like a touchstone, come back to just this simple practice, just this simple life, just a blade of grass. When maybe we're fretting about something not working out, something not going the way we want, you can just come back and remember to just, like Indra, plant a blade of grass. I thought that was very lovely. Just notice our breathing. Just hear the ticking clock. The little warbling sound of the birds. Once a month we have a monthly well-being ceremony on Monday mornings, which is coming up this coming Monday, and we chant the Enmei Juku Kanongyo at that ceremony, and there's a reference to it in Taking the Path of Zen, which I'd just like to read out. This is Robert Aitken's Taking the Path of Zen. In the Enmei Juku Kanongyo, the 10-verse Kanzeon Sutra of Eternal Life, we recite Nennen Ju Shinki Nennen Furi Shin. Thought after thought arises in the mind. Thought after thought is not separate from mind. Thought after thought is the very nature of our mind. When this thought after thought is harmoniously working together with other people, animals, plants and things, we are united with the task at hand and with moving from one task to another. We are united with the Dharma of our day. It's a beautiful verse. The Enmei Juku Kanongyo. Nennen Ju Shinki Nennen Furi Shin. Thought after thought arises in mind. Thought after thought is not separate from mind. Got a kind of a contentment to it. If we don't think of our mind as separate, our thinking mind as separate from a kind of collective universal mind. And we're intimate with everything. Everything is okay as it is, even if it's terrible. So it's everything's okay as it is, even if it's terrible, even if it's fantastic, even if it's neutral. And then from that spot, our vows, our precepts rise up and we take action or not. I have a thought or not. So the activity comes from a place of acceptance in the first instance. Nothing is separate. And I think when we really contemplate that we're not separate from things, then the whole sense of kind of ego identification, of wanting to achieve particular things, or be recognized in a particular way, it all starts to just melt away. And instead we just are just responding to things. We're just responding to things. Our state of mind is not dependent on conditions. It's very powerful to be able to have our state of mind not be dependent on conditions. It's powerful, it's rare. And that's what we do in our practice, not just for the personal pleasant feeling, or I don't know if pleasant feeling is the right word, but not just for our own personal sake, but because if we have a kind of steadiness, sort of courageous willingness to be in the present moment, then we can be much more beneficial to other beings. Because we're not preoccupied with self-concerns. We see ourself in everything else, and so we respond to everything from that kind of care that we would naturally have for our own body. We can extend that care to everybody else. I think that's all I specifically wanted to say. I might just leave the recording on, actually. Sometimes the conversations recordings is kind of good. Would anyone like to comment, or ask a question, just so you can see? We've lost a few people here, but we've got Jack and Sarah with us, and you can see the Zendo here. Doing it right, there we go. Would anyone like to share any thoughts? Francis.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of important, to sort of have a calm mind and to feel connected. I think, as you were saying, with the modern world, we're sort of so, particularly with neoliberalism, we're so sort of almost forced to feel that we have to be something more amazing than what we just are, and really, as you said, it's just to be is enough. Yeah. So kind of, I guess, listening to you say that kind of reinforces it with myself. Yeah. Yeah. A friend of mine she's Buddhist, but Thai Buddhist, and she recently did this show, a flamenco dance show that just revealed her whole humble self, and it was like herself leaving herself bare for everyone to sort of see, and it started with this ceremony of gratitude and just the connections, like the belonging, the sense of belonging. It was beautiful. Oh, thank you.
Well, strangely enough, when we kind of let go of ego identification, our beautifulness becomes more apparent, just kind of like what you're describing with your friend. We don't try to lose that ego identification so that we can be, that would be all back the front, but it just naturally occurs that when we're naturally, it's like Buddha nature's just being itself without us getting in the way. And I did have some thoughts on this topic around failure. As some of you know, I have a family member who's very ill And I'm working with my mind of, doing my best to make it all work out. But it might not. And I'm just trying to be that will be okay too. As long as I'm being as skillful as I can be and other professionals are being as skillful as they can be, that's all we can do. That's all we can do. We can't do more than that. And that has to be okay too, because that's how it actually is. If it is that way, that is the way it is. So I've been practicing imagining being okay with what we would call failure. Yeah. Yeah. Jack, are you wanting to say something, or have you just got your hands in Gasho?
I was just like resting. I was just resting my head like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I suppose I'll say something since I'm here and the spotlight's on me. A few of the things like really resonated. Like I love this sense of that simplicity of the blade of grass. And the sufficiency that's enough. That sense of needing to embellish or create more. That can be kind of like dissatisfaction and striving and neoliberal mindset that something's wrong, and for us to be doing the right thing, certain kinds of outward progress have to be exhibited, like advancing in a career or getting a better car or whatever it is, always thinking there's something better over there or something. And I find that very compelling myself to try to step out of that. And I really do like that Walt Whitman poem that I shared earlier,
Do you have it with you there?
Yeah, where he just says, I'm just loafing around looking at a blade of grass, basically. Yeah. I'll just read the first 3 stanzas. It's very nice. It's very nice. It's called Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself. And what I assume, you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good as belongs to you. I loaf and bite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease, not till death.
Yeah,
And it goes on and on and on. Just that sense of, a simple thing like a blade of grass, but we're just a blade of grass.
Yeah.
We're all born of the universe, descendants of the Big Bang.
Yeah. And just to add that we can still be industrious and still have ambition. You know, like I'm all for people using their skill sets. If you've got talent, use your talent. Just don't forget the blade of grass at the same time.
Yeah, because that's still the blade of grass.
That's right.
All
That's still
the
the blade of
time.
grass. Even
All
if
the
it's like a Nobel Prize, it's just like a blade of grass
yeah,
with
it's
a
just
Nobel Prize. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Sarah?
Thank you. We've been reading it's called Trusted Mind, The Rebellion of Chinese Zen by Musang in a class. And so it's the Song of the Trusting Mind, and there's different, the different people interpretations of it. But one sentence in the book is a goalless, planless way of being in the world becomes the canvas upon which lack of self-centered striving paints a master drawing, which is beautiful. And
Yeah.
someone in the group was saying, well, I don't understand, because how can we not have goals and not have plans? And, I mean, we still do have plans and goals, but I think there's a different way of sort of going about it. And so what came to my mind was from Dogen, where when he writes in Actualizing the Fundamental Point, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. To forget the self is to be actualized by myriad things. When actualized by myriad things, your body and mind, as well as the bodies and minds of others, drop away. No trace of realization remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. So I feel like you can have a plan. Like if you get a flat tire, you have to go get your tire fixed. So your plan is to get that done. But while you're getting it done, you can, instead of like just be focused on your plan, your goal, you're like allowing yourself to be actualized by the myriad things, meeting the person who is going to help you with your tire, talking to somebody working there, so it's and then the other thing in this book that it keeps talking about is, which I thought would be helpful, is to continuously say, like, especially when your mind starts to feel separated, when you start to feel like a sense of there's a me and there's a you, just say to yourself, not two. And it helps us to remember there's not two. And so that's helping me recently, so that's why I'm sharing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I kind of really like that original quote that you read out. Would you mind emailing me a copy of that? I'd appreciate
Okay.
that. Thank you. Jack.
Even as we have goals, we can still remain kind of open to possibility, gentle and flexible with our goals. If we're too rigid, we'll miss the full extent of what's possible, perhaps. Because with our goals, we can kind of forget the possibility of things actually turning out way better than we might have imagined, even. Is another possibility. So with our goals. So to remain gentle and flexible and loving with that. Yeah, and I try to bring in the not self thing too, Sarah, to remind myself. Yeah, I've been doing that lately too. Not in the same words as you, but the same kind of thing, you know. There is no Jack, you know, something like that.
Were you going to say something, Brendan, before?
Yeah, I think the important distinction between whether achieving something is skillful or unskillful is whether it's done from a place of a sense of lack or a sense of contentment.
Yeah.
Because when it's done from a sense of lack, you're expecting a certain outcome, so the action is with an expectation attached, and that's when there can be suffering. But if it's done from a place where you're content and your cup is already full, then the very action, you're just doing it for the joy of the action itself, and whether or not it leads to certain outcomes isn't important.
Yeah. Were you able to hear that, Sarah? And Jack did, but Sarah couldn't. Mainly, I think I'll just briefly paraphrase. Brendan was saying, if we're coming from a place of lack when we're achieving things, that will be a problem. But if we come from a place of feeling already our cup is full, then it's not a problem. Yeah. All right. Well, let's finish with our vows. I'll just turn off the recording.